Most politicians in the United States, at least on the right side of the political spectrum, claim the United States is a Christian country. It certainly was founded as one. But if that's the case, why do so many Christians suffer as a result of U.S. foreign military ventures? Before the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, there were 1.5 million Christians living in Iraq. But then, the U.S.-led destruction of Saddam Hussein's Iraq immediately left a power vacuum where the Islamic religious fundamentalists regularly began targeting Iraqi churches, often during Sunday evening services, killing priests and worshipers. Bombings became a grim weekly occurrence. The Christian population has since declined in only 20 years, from 1.5 million to only a couple 100,000. A similar thing happened in Syria. Before the U.S.-led regime change efforts against Bashar al-Assad in Syria, that country was home to 1.8 million Christians. However, following the arming of various extremist groups like Al-Qaeda in Syria and ISIS, which fueled religious sectarian violence, nearly 90% of Syria's Christian population has been displaced or killed. And today, only 200,000 Christians remain from the original 1.8 million. It's true, these Christians are not directly targeted and killed by the U.S., but instead by religious extremist groups that are funded and armed by the U.S. The American media never covers the Christian costs of these wars. Could this silence, though, be deliberate, given the vast Christian population in the United States, whose tax dollars, amounting to billions every year, were sent to support these wars and arm these religious groups? When Americans think about religious minorities in Israel, the focus always falls on the Muslim population. But there's another often overlooked group at the heart of the Holy Land: Christians. In 2024, almost 1 year into Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip, the situation for Christians living in Israel is dire. And it's not what the media or even American churches will ever tell you, but we will. I'm investigative journalist Ben Swann, and this is Reckoning Israel and Gaza. Before the war, Israel's Christian minority were already being targeted with dispossession and violence. In Jerusalem's Old City, narrow streets lined the ancient neighborhood, and Jewish Israeli civilians spitting on and attacking Christian clergy members is commonplace. Here's a video from a few days before October 7th of Christians in the Old City of Jerusalem carrying a cross. As a group of Orthodox Jewish Israelis walk by, they spit at those Christians. Another video from only a day earlier shows Jewish Israelis walking by a church entrance in the Old City of Jerusalem and spitting in the entrance as a symbolic disapproval of the Christian faith. Now, perhaps this is physically harmless, but it is representative of the anti-Christian mindset of some Israelis. It's become pretty mainstream to believe that Christians don't belong in Israel and only Jewish people do. Back in April, Brother Matteo Munari was upstairs in his office at the Church of the Flagellation, a church along the path where Jesus is said to have carried his cross on his way to his crucifixion. Munari heard a commotion downstairs in the church and found that Israelis had broken into that church and thrown the statue of Jesus Christ off the pedestal. The statue of Jesus remained partly intact despite damage to the statue's face and both legs breaking. The Dormition Abbey in Jerusalem is identified as the place where the Virgin Mary died. A dozen or so Christian missionaries still live there. Well, a few years ago, that mission, the Virgin Mary's place of death, was attacked and vandalized by Israelis. The graffiti on the ancient walls read, "Death to heretical Christians, the enemies of Israel, and may his name and memory be obliterated," in reference to Jesus. According to Haaretz at a Jewish school, the leader of an anti-assimilation group, Ben Swann, told students that it's, quote, mitzvah, or a good deed, to burn and destroy Christian churches. Gopstein compares Christians to vampires and says that they should be expelled from Israel, with religious celebrations like Christmas being banned. And this is not just some random guy with no political power. Here is Ben Gopstein rallying and hanging out with Israel's current Minister of National Security, one of the most powerful people in the current Israeli government. In the Old City of Jerusalem, the Christian Armenian quarter, it's the smallest, with the Jewish and Muslim quarters dwarfing it in size. And in the beginning of this year, the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem was experiencing a vast dispossession campaign. After the war began, Israeli development firms, with the protection of armed Israeli civilians and the Israeli military, illegally raided church property multiple days in a row with attack dogs and guns. Bulldozers manned by Israelis were used to destroy the outside of that church in an attempt to, according to Christian Armenians, quote, further Judaize Jerusalem. The Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem has published an emergency press release that reads this, quote, "The Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem is under possibly the greatest existential threat of its 16th century history. This existential territorial threat fully extends to all of the Christian communities of Jerusalem. The police have chosen in the last few days to demand that all members of the Armenian community vacate the premises. We plead with the entirety of the Christian communities of Jerusalem to stand with the Armenian Patriarchate in these unprecedented times, as this is another clear step taken toward the endangerment of the Christian presence in Jerusalem and the Holy Land," end quote. So if that's what's happening inside of Israel to Christians, the only democracy in the Middle East, what's happening to Christians where the Israeli military is actively engaged in war? St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church is located in Gaza City. It is believed to be one of the oldest Christian churches in the entire world. St. Porphyrius was a 5th century bishop in Gaza whose tomb lies under that church. This was the church before October 7th, and this is the church now. On October 19th, that church grounds were hit on all sides by Israeli airstrikes as both Palestinian Christians and Muslims took refuge there. By what some consider a miracle, a crucifix atop that church remained undamaged and untouched. The strike killed 18 people and injured many more. The Holy Family Church, built in 1974, that's Gaza's only Roman Catholic church, and it became a shelter for local Christian communities once the war began. It was hit by an airstrike on November 4th. The Byzantine Church of Jabalia was built in 444 and is considered one of the most important churches in Levant. It was discovered in 1997 while building a road in Gaza. It is a religious and archaeological site. That site took years to be excavated and restored and was opened with a celebration headed by the most senior Christian cleric in Gaza. In October, it was destroyed by Israeli airstrikes. And as a new front in this war opens up in Lebanon, it's important for Americans and especially Christians to remember that Lebanon is home to a giant Christian community. And the media almost completely ignores this fact. There are 2,405 churches in Lebanon. Almost 40% of Lebanon is Christian. But just last week, Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon killed 350 people, including more than 60 women and children. So should Americans, especially Christian Americans, be allowing billions of their taxpayer dollars to be used to ethnically cleanse, attack, and bomb holy sites and Christian civilians? Let us know what you think. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at @truth_in_media, or you can see all of our reports in this series at truthinmedia.com.